age. I don't know if you worry about your parents, but I definitely do. Loved ones
Yeah,
who
of
are,
course, because
yeah,
you've got them forever, right?
yeah, exactly. Like loved ones who are aging. I mean, we're all aging, but you don't really think about it as much until someone's into their, 60s, 70s, 80s, and it's like, oh, now I'm really like, concerned and maybe pushing for certain things. But I think that's that's the problem, right? Is that most people don't think about it until they get a bit older.
Yeah, it isn't really thought of as a proactive thing when you're in your 20s and 30s. Like, I was a little bit weird that I did think about those things, but again, it was mostly because I was like, I have a lot to accomplish in this life. I need to live for a really long time to do it all.
But not just live for a long time, right? Be able to do what you want to do. It's like
live for a long time so that I can keep doing all the things that I need to do. Yeah, you're absolutely right? It's not just living old and being miserable, but yeah, so I guess, I was probably a little bit unusual in thinking about it earlier on than most people do. However, the sooner you do start thinking about it and taking some action and putting it into practice, the more rewards you get and the easier it is. So it's definitely something that, I would encourage people to do, both for themselves and for their pets. Like, if you start in my puppy or kitten program, right, to set them up for that, 20 to 30 year lifespan from day one for you, like when you bring them home, that's much easier than working with someone who's already, arthritic and whatever else may be going on. Anyway, back to what you were saying.
Yeah, so essentially having that vision, I mean, that's what set you apart probably from other 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, is that you had a vision and it was very clear of, this is what I need to be doing in the decades that follow. And in order to do those things, I need to be functioning at my best. And that's a very clear vision that a lot of people don't have. And I think that's really like the first step, right? We always say like, find your why. I think that's really the why, is what is your vision? Why are you wanting to cultivate health, wellness, vitality now and in the future? It doesn't make, if we jump straight to the things, exercise and eat well and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not.
Should we call our pillars the blah, 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 blah?
Yeah. Our pillars, the blah, blahs. If you skip straight to that without knowing your why, it's not going to be sustainable and it's not going to be as individualized for you. I mean, the pillars are the framework.
Right.
But you have to individualize it to you and what you need to get to your goal. Like,
you have to know why it's important for you.
Yeah.
Because if something's not important, you won't do it. You just won't. Right. Like, there's a million things that we can be doing with our time, right? I could be reading a book right now. I could be going to have lunch with a friend. I could be watching Netflix. I could be like playing with Pippin outside. Like, there's, right? So we do the things that are important to us. We do the things that reward us, that are enjoyable, that sometimes we have to do the things we don't like doing because we literally have to do them, right? Taxes and things. So my point is, though, if you are surrounded with so much choice and you don't have a clear vision for something, you don't have a strong desire for something, you are not going to do it. So vision is where everything starts.
And not only are you less likely to do it, but I think because there's so much you can focus on, you might actually end up focusing on the wrong things, whereas it's more relevant for someone else, but not so much for you. Right? Like, to take a kind of extreme example, I guess this is kind of extreme. Like, if your vision is to be running marathons in your 80s, what you need to do to prepare for that is going to be very different, excuse me, than for someone who their vision in their 80s is to be, a lawyer working at their desk job still. Like, it's a very different path. And while they have a similar foundation, it's not going to, like, personalized, individualized medicine is the future. But also when it comes to lifestyle, it's the same, notion that I'm always preaching, is there isn't one perfect diet for everyone. Like, yeah, there are foundational pieces, right? Like, please eat your colors and your fruits and veg and blah, blah, blah. But like, what does that actually look like is going to be really, really different for each individual. So in the same way, how you apply the pillars, which ones you really emphasize, and what it looks like for you is going to be specific to your vision.
Yeah, so you move into strategy and to framework as your second and maybe third steps in the sequence. But if you don't know why you're doing it, like it's a classic bride, you know, like the bride wants to lose 5 pounds for the wedding dress kind of thing. Like she's got a pretty strong vision of why she wants to lose those 5 pounds, and she's going to do it, right? Whereas if you're kind of like, oh, it'd be kind of cool if I could lose some pounds and whatever, you're really not. You're really not. And that's always the go-to example. There's plenty of other things we can put in there but you've got to get connected to why that's important, why you're motivated about that, why you're excited about that, what is something that you dream. Like, why not go for your best dream? This is what annoys me. I'm going to get on a soapbox now. This is what annoys me is when people have little dreams or other people tell people that the big dreams are too big and unrealistic. We should all be dreaming, having a huge vision of possibility, right? And then going out, being allowed to own that, being allowed to what is it to me if you decide that you're going to want to be an astronaut? Like, that's a pretty big vision, right? You're going to have to do a whole lot of maths and science, probably go back to school, probably join the military, there's a lot of steps in the process from going from where you are now to being an astronaut, right? Why should I tell you that that's not something that you can do, right? You're clearly fit and capable. You're clearly smart. You clearly have the motivation to get to the dream that you want. Like this, why should I say that's too big, you can't have it? Nobody should take away your vision and tell you that it's too small or too big or the wrong shape or impossible, right? I want everyone to have their vision so that they can take the pathway, get into those strategies, use the framework that works, get a mentor or guide who will accelerate your process there. So the learning curve is like that rather than all over the place, right? But don't let people knock you off your stool. Don't let them steal or make you go down in size. Like your life is your life, yeah? And if you don't live it because someone told you that you dreamed too big, who are you going to blame? Like, you're going to blame them? Well, they've probably forgotten that happened, but it meant that you got crushed down. So you've got to take responsibility and say, no, actually, this is mine. I'm proud of it. I'm going to defend that. My ambition is worthy. Support me, please, or just hold your opinion, hold your tongue.
I love that. And it can be, sometimes maybe it means not sharing the full
maybe
of it with everyone. And that's okay too, because sometimes, unfortunately, we're surrounded by people who don't understand how to support us in our health journeys. And sometimes sharing that with the wrong person can, again, unfortunately, be kind of sabotaging to yourself. This is something I see a lot with folks that I support. And even when people want to be supportive, they don't really know how, because again, it's so kind of out there. It's so against the grain of what the norm is. And it's like, what? You can't do that. What about this? What about this? But I think the problem that most people have is they're not crystal clear on that vision to begin with. So for folks listening, like do the little exercise, like close your eyes and, imagine what does it look like for you? What do your 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s and plus look like for you? What are you doing? Because we know what happens to our body as we live in this world and accumulate years. We know what happens. So if you don't do anything, if you don't have the vision and the strategy and then do the pillars, the tactics, we know what's going to happen. Like, it's not really hard.
It's a foregone conclusion. Like we know, like if you formula, if you follow the path of least resistance and keep living a standard, regular, normal life that most people live without taking proactive care, you and your pets will end up in this position here, which is a lifespan truncated, and most of the time with age-related chronic diseases that are debilitating, painful, depressing, and limiting. right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that will usually be the thing that takes you out sooner. That's the pathway if you don't take and this is I know it sounds really heavy, right? But the flip side of it is there's 90%-ish control that you have to take a different journey. And when you say, okay, well, how many birthdays do I want my dog to have? How many years old would I like my cat to get to? How many years do I want to have them with me?
Well, here's the thing is like, why do we say it's morbid to talk about death? Like, we all know we're going to die. Like, it's not morbid. Like, it is what it is. That's a part of being alive, right? Like, if we didn't die, would there be as much beauty in life? I mean, that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But like, it's not morbid to talk about death. It's not. Like, I think we need to talk about it more. I think that's why it becomes more relevant as we get older, because people are actually letting themselves think about it. But if we,
and also too, I think there's a revulsion to it in the sense of, well, I don't want to get debilitated. I don't want to become dependent. I don't want to be in pain and suffering, right? And why would you? Like, nobody wants that. So we'd avoid thinking about like older age and aging and death because it usually has very negative connotations. Yeah. Like, you know, imagine instead if the normal was that somebody's getting into their 120s and the entire time they've had, like, they've got kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, and great-great-grandkids by that stage. Yeah, so the family circle is enormous. They're going on adventures with all sorts of different people in life. They've got lots of other friends because their other friends aren't dying soon. Women aren't losing their husbands early and going into widowhood so soon. So when they go into retirement, they've got another 40 years with their life partner, their favorite person, their husband, their wife, right, to do life more. Or you don't even have to retire and you can take up new sports and you can learn new languages and you can travel more. Like, what if that was the normal? And then 3 days after getting, like, I don't know, pneumonia or something, he passed away in bed with all of his family. Or not all the whole family were in the bed, but they were in the room, you know, singing a nice song or something. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here in this story now, but it was a happy death is my point, right? And a death that doesn't have, oh, I regret this and I wish that, and if only I wasn't sick, like, but one that is like, here's my favorite people. I've lived an amazing time. Everything has been ticked off the box, like, because I lived my vision. And that was the normal. And then the very occasional unlucky one, oh my gosh, so unlucky. That's because there is always like some percentage of like not having control and you know, we're not in a perfect world. But let's see if we can not shift the normal away from that horrendous thing that we all try not to think about and embrace something that means that you can have that. I mean, that's the destiny I want.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That the revulsion, is that the word I'm saying? Repulsion?
That's what I said, yeah.
that people have around talking about death is actually not death itself, but it's what leads up to it for most people. Yeah, that's very true. I mean, to be lonely, and because that's the reality for a lot, like you mentioned, to be lonely, to be not able to kind of have your independence. I mean, no one, that's like, there's a Greek myth. What is the guy's name? Telonius? Something like that. I could be getting that wrong, but he had wished, he got like a wish, and his wish was to live forever. And he forgot to ask for help. And I mean, that's a nightmare. No one wants that. Yeah. No one wants that. So with what time we do have, like, freaking make the most of it, right? Like,
make it fun. Set it up to be
like a fortune cookie, but like
it's like saving, right? Saving money and compound interest. Right? We all know that if we started putting $1 or £1 into the bank account every week when we were 5 years old and using compound interest, we'd be millionaires by 30 or whatever the rule is, right? Like, we know that's a thing. That's little and often, right? And compound interest. And it's the same. And then you get the big payout because you're like, woo, now I can just go and buy that house straight up or whatever the thing is you're going to do. And it's the same with this. It's like, okay, the vision I want is to have my health all the way through, however long I live, and it's probably going to be longer, but for all health and freedom and independence all the way through, right? Okay, so start putting that dollar in that account every week now.
Yeah.
And it will build and compound because we know that the framework and the pillars all build and strengthen each other and multiply the effects. So this is your compound interest. And then you're going to get that payout of a life of joy and freedom into whatever digits of numbers you have as your vision.
My vision has a lot to do with gardening and yoga.
So garden. Super healthy garden.
Not to sound like an old lady already, but like I do love to garden. We've got some veggies over there. Yeah. Anyway, making it everyone, I think everyone has the, I mean, I don't know if there's an exception to this. I think everyone has the vision for their health, for their lifespan to also be a health span, to have health.
Yeah.
But in order to solidify it, we have to come up with the vision. What would you do? It's essentially the question of what would you do with that health? What do you want to do with that health? What are you going to do with that health? And then from there, we can work backwards and look at what are you at risk for? What has kind of led up to this point? Where are you currently at? And then you come up with your strategy, and then you can come up with how to implement those pillars. But we've got to have that guiding light.
Yeah, and everyone knows what it is. They just haven't. Everyone has that in them, and I think there's a subconscious niggly hint, tantalizing sniff of it. But until you properly pay attention to that in your brain and go, or in your heart, wherever it's going to live, and go, actually, what does that look like? Yeah. What does that really translate to for me? Yeah. All right, then we can just blithely live kind of not paying attention to it. But when you pay attention and bring it into sort of full Technicolor glory and look at that and go, that's what I'm going for, then it becomes a lot easier to stick a blueberry in your pancake, right? Or to give your dog a sardine, or to make your cat a climbing pole or whatever, because you can attach the effort that it takes to do those things to the vision and go, well, that's worthwhile. That is so worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it. Well, it seems like a natural place to wrap things up for today. What do we have coming up? Is there anything that we need to... Oh, you're freezing on me.
Yeah.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Is there anything we need to remind people of?
You asked me that yesterday. I was going to find out. I didn't.
All right. Well, these lives, we do them on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 9:30 Eastern-ish. Just sharing our thoughts and conversations that we have behind the scenes with you all. Because again, I don't think most people are talking about coming up with your, thinking about your death and your vision and how we can get there now. And these are things that need to be talked about. So here we are chatting about them. If you're tuning into this either live or recorded, interested to know what your vision is for yourself. If you want to share it or an abbreviated version in the comments, we absolutely.
I literally love hearing people's visions. So if you do have one and you're comfortable sharing, please do, because it absolutely makes my day. And that helps me also, selfishly, crystallize my vision, because when I know that I can do a better job of leading people in a particular way, or to be inspirational in a particular way, or to help bust the myths in a particular, or whatever it happens to be. So your vision enriches my vision. And it also helps me do a better job when I happen to be blessed enough to be your mentor or guide. And I'm sure Katie's 100% the same. So yeah, sharing's great.
All right, guys, until next week, we'll see you then.